A homeless boy, 10 years old, forgotten by the world, and surviving with nothing but instinct and grit. But one freezing night, everything changed when a soft cry from a dark alley led him to saving a little girl or two, who were being chased down by dangerous men. Who was the little girl he saved? And what happened after that changed his life forever? Listen to today's story and let us know where you're listening from. In the dead of winter, Chicago was merciless. The wind howled like a beast through cracked alleyways and broken windows. Beneath a highway overpass near the south side, 10-year-old Caleb Foster pulled his oversized coat tighter. His shoes were 2 sizes too big, soaked and splitting at the seams. But it didn't matter. He had no home, only corners of the city that hadn't kicked him out yet. Caleb knew how to move unseen. He'd learned the city's secrets, which diners tossed out leftovers, which buildings still leaked heat, and which streets were best avoided after dark. That night, all he wanted was a warm corner to survive until morning, but fate had other plans. As Caleb turned into an abandoned side street behind a boarded-up bakery, he froze. The wind carried something. Not the usual sirens or clattering trash cans. It was a sound he hadn't heard in a long time, a child's cry. He followed it cautiously. Behind a dumpster, curled up and trembling, sat a little girl no older than 5. Her thin pink jacket was no match for the freezing air. Her knees hugged her chest, and her cheeks were stained with tears. "Hey," Caleb whispered, kneeling slowly. "You okay?" She looked up with wide, terrified eyes but said nothing. "You lost?" he asked softly. She didn't answer, just shivered harder. Against every rule the streets had taught him, Caleb took off his coat and wrapped it around her. "Come on. I know a place." As they made their way to an old boiler room beneath a vacant apartment building, a new sound stopped Caleb in his tracks, a whimper. Another one? Hidden behind a stack of trash bins was a second girl, dirty, shaking, and clutching a broken doll. Her eyes met his with raw panic. The first girl gasped and whispered, "Lily." The second girl stood up, "Sophie?" They rushed into each other's arms with such desperation that it made Caleb freeze. It wasn't just a reunion, it was a rescue. Their embrace said everything words couldn't, that they had been separated too long, that fear had swallowed them both, and that somehow in the cruelest of places they had found each other again. Caleb stood there, stunned. These girls knew each other. This wasn't just 2 random kids on the street. No, this was something bigger, something darker. Because if they knew each other, then they were taken together. Or worse, one was taken and the other had followed. And now that they were found, someone out there, someone dangerous, was probably panicking. Someone powerful enough to make 2 children vanish without a trace, and determined enough to make sure they were never seen again. Caleb felt a chill crawl up his spine. Who were these girls, and what had they just escaped from? He didn't have answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let them go back. Inside the boiler room, Caleb started a small fire in a can and huddled with the girls. He asked their names again. "I'm Lily Brooks," said the older one, her voice fragile. "She's Sophie. Sophie Walker." Walker, the name echoed in Caleb's mind. He looked down at Sophie's coat, embroidered inside in golden thread. Walker. Could it be the Walker family? The billionaire real estate dynasty with properties from Manhattan to San Francisco? No wonder someone had taken her. The next morning, Caleb risked everything and took them to Maggie's Market, a small grocery on the corner where the owner, Margaret Harris, sometimes gave him expired snacks. She gasped when she saw the children. "Good Lord, Caleb, what happened? They're lost. Or taken, I don't know. Please help them." Margaret led them to her back office, gave them food, and called someone she trusted more than the cops, James Whitman, a retired journalist turned private social worker. When he arrived, Caleb told him everything, from the alley to the embroidery on Sophie's coat. Whitman's face went pale. "You may have just saved the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country." Whitman arranged to get the children to a safe house on the outskirts of town, but it was already too late. As they left through the back alley, 2 men in black coats appeared at the corner. Caleb grabbed the girls and ran. Through streets, over fences, into junkyards. They ran until their lungs burned. The men chased them relentlessly, shouting into walkie-talkies. They ran until their lungs burned. They darted into the old Belmont rail yard, a vast stretch of rusted train cars, forgotten by the city, perfect for hiding. But Caleb knew the moment they ducked behind a rusted boxcar that they had made a mistake. There was no way out. Shouts followed. "We know you're in there!" Caleb pressed the girls behind a stack of pallets and dropped to his knees, heart pounding like a war drum. He looked at them both, terrified, gasping, barely standing. There was nowhere left to run. Then, tires screeched. A black SUV came tearing through the side lot. Its headlights cut through the night like twin swords. The vehicle spun to a halt just feet from them, the back door flinging open. "Get in," a deep voice shouted. Caleb didn't move. He didn't know who it was. Another trick? Another trap? But then the voice came again, urgent but calm. "It's okay. I'm here to help. Richard Walker sent me. Name's David Cole." Caleb didn't wait. He lifted Sophie and pulled Lily to her feet, sprinting the last few yards. Shots rang out behind them. Through the rear window, Caleb saw two men fading into the distance, cursing and waving their fists. He fell back into the seat, panting, arms wrapped around the girls. Safe, for now. David Cole glanced at them in the rearview mirror, his jaw tight. "You kids just stepped into a war," he muttered. "But you did good. You did real good." 30 minutes later, the SUV pulled into the gates of a massive estate in Lake Forest. A man in a dark overcoat and gray suit was already waiting on the steps, Richard Walker himself. When he saw Sophie step out of the car, he dropped to his knees, tears running down his face. "Sophie," he whispered, scooping her into his arms. She cried into his shoulder, "Daddy." Caleb stood back, watching. His job was done. Time to disappear again. But then Walker turned to him. "Who are you?" Caleb lowered his eyes. No one. His voice was barely a whisper. He didn't believe he mattered. Not in a world that had always stepped over him. Richard Walker stepped forward. He studied the boy, the torn shoes, the dirt under his fingernails. But more than that, he saw courage, raw, unpolished, and undeniable. "You're not no one," Richard said, his voice firm. "You're the reason I'm holding my daughter right now, the reason she's alive." Caleb shifted uncomfortably. "You're someone who brought my daughter home," Richard continued. "Someone who mattered when no one else even knew she was gone. You saw her. You cared. When the whole world turned a blind eye, you didn't." He paused, then dropped to one knee, meeting Caleb's eye level. "You didn't just save her, Caleb. You saved me too." For a moment, Caleb said nothing. His lips trembled, and for the first time in years, the boy who had learned to never cry blinked away tears. He didn't know what the future held, but at that moment, one thing was clear. He was seen. He was someone. Richard Walker didn't let Caleb leave. He brought him inside, gave him clean clothes, a hot bath, and the first real meal the boy had eaten in years. Days passed. Then one evening, Walker sat with Caleb in his study. Richard leaned forward, eyes steady, voice calm. "I want to adopt you," he said. Caleb's head snapped up. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "Not out of debt," Richard continued. "Not because I feel I owe you something. I've written checks before, Caleb. But this is different." He glanced at the photo on his desk, Sophie grinning in her princess pajamas. "She calls you her hero," he said, softer now. "And truth be told, I do too." Caleb's mouth parted, but no words came. "You don't have to answer now," Richard said gently. "But I need you to know this door will always be open. You saved my daughter. But you also reminded me of the kind of man I want to be. I don't know how to be a part of this," Caleb whispered. Richard smiled, not with pity, but with pride. "That's the beauty of it," he said. "You don't have to know. We'll learn together, one day at a time." Caleb's throat tightened. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. And in that moment, surrounded by warmth, safety, and something he'd never had before, belonging, he realized for the first time in his life, maybe he could be loved. Meanwhile, Whitman uncovered the man behind the kidnapping, Charles Benton, a ruthless investor who lost a $300 million deal to Walker. Benton's plan had been to use Sophie as leverage. When it failed, he tried to bury it, but now Whitman had enough evidence to bring him down. Benton was arrested days later, charged with conspiracy and kidnapping. Weeks turned into months. Caleb Foster became Caleb Walker, adopted not only into a home but into a family. He began school. He struggled. He stumbled, but he fought harder than anyone. Lily, who had followed Sophie, was now taken care by the Walker family and now living with a loving foster family nearby, became their close friend and frequent visitor. Sophie never left both their sides. Years later, on a bright spring day, Caleb returned alone to the same alley where he'd first heard Sophie cry. He stood there for a long time and whispered, "Thank you." The wind carried it away, like a secret between the city and the boy who never stopped believing. Caleb thought he was no one. But one choice, one act of kindness, gave him a name, a home, and a family. If you were walking past that dark alley on a freezing night, would you have stopped? Please let us know in the comments below, and thank you for listening to Storyline Narratives.